The galactic throne chamber floated above a pale blue star, vast and flawless, carved from crystal alloys and ancient pride. Hundreds of representatives filled the tiered seats, emperors, queens, hive minds, and artificial overseers, each confident, each powerful, each convinced the galaxy was finally under control. This session was supposed to be ceremonial, a victory meeting. The last border war had ended weeks ago. Trade routes were open, rebellions crushed. The galaxy, once again, belonged to the throne. At the center dais, the High Chancellor spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Let the record show," he said, "that the era of unpredictable species has ended. The remaining outliers have been neutralized or absorbed. There are no further existential risks on the board." Soft approval rippled through the chamber. A junior archivist was called forward to finalize a long-overdue matter: the removal of obsolete threat classifications. Names long forgotten, files untouched for centuries. One name appeared on the central display: humanity. The archivist hesitated. "Proceed," the Chancellor said, barely glancing. The archivist cleared his throat. Designation: Terran origin species. Status: presumed extinct or functionally irrelevant. Last confirmed contact: 800 standard cycles ago. A few delegates chuckled. "Ah yes," one elder lord said. "The Death World primitives. Loud, emotional, overconfident." Another added, "They burned bright and fast, like many before them." The Chancellor raised a hand. "Then it is agreed. Humanity is removed from all active consideration." The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the system prepared to archive the name forever. That was when the alarm screamed. Not the sharp cry of weapons fire. Not the steady pulse of a standard threat warning. This was different. This was every sensor activating at once, and then failing. Technicians froze. Data streams flooded in, then corrupted themselves. Long-range scanners returned blank. Short-range scans returned contradictions. One officer shouted, "Mass detection." "No, wait. Range error." "Impossible," another replied. There was nothing there a moment ago. Space directly outside the chamber viewports shifted. Not exploded. Not warped. It folded. Like reality itself had taken a breath and forgotten how to exhale. Then something emerged. It did not arrive with a flash or a jump wake. It did not tear space apart. It simply appeared, already there, already real. The shape was enormous. Larger than any battleship in throne records. Longer than some stations. Its hull was dark, scarred, layered with plates that looked forged rather than grown or assembled. Ancient, yet untouched by decay. No insignia, no banners, no recognized architecture. It hung in silence, so close that several throne defense fleets were already inside its optimal firing range. The chamber went silent. "Identify the vessel," the Chancellor ordered, his voice tight. Sensors struggled. Algorithms crashed. Artificial minds returned null responses. Finally, a single archive system, so old it was no longer networked, pinged. One word appeared on the display: human. Disbelief swept the chamber. "That is not possible," someone whispered. "Humanity is gone." They had no ships like that. They had no ships at all, by the end. The vessel did not move. It did not target. It did not communicate. It simply existed. A throne admiral leaned forward. "If this is a relic, we can control it. Lock weapons. Cautious power levels." Before the order could be completed, every targeting system across the fleets went dark. No damage. No counterattack. Just silence. The human ship finally reacted. Sections of its hull shifted, not opening like weapon ports, but aligning, as if waking from a long rest. Energy signatures bloomed. Clean, contained, terrifyingly efficient. Not one throne system could classify them. A technician screamed, "Those readings, those aren't weapons." "Then what are they?" the Chancellor demanded. The technician swallowed. "They're restraints." The human battleship sent its first transmission. It was not directed at the throne. It was broadcast on every frequency, every language, every medium, audible, visual, mathematical. A calm voice filled the chamber. "Old. Humans. Tired. This system is under observation. No threats. No demands. Just a statement." The voice continued. "For 800 cycles, humanity honored the silence requested by the galaxy." The throne chamber erupted. "Requested?" someone shouted. "By who?" The human voice did not raise in volume, yet it carried absolute authority. By those who feared what would happen if humanity stayed. The ship powered another system. Space around it shimmered. Gravity vectors twisted. Time readings slipped out of sync. Entire fleets drifted, unanchored, helpless. The voice spoke again. That silence has been broken. The High Chancellor stood slowly. If you are human, he said carefully, state your purpose. Humanity has no claim here. There was a pause. Then the human voice answered, colder now. Humanity does not return to claim. The ship's hull lit with symbols, old Terran script, burned into the metal itself. We return to remember. The chamber display flickered. Archived footage began to play. Old battles, sealed votes, forgotten decisions. The throne realized too late. This ship was not lost. It was waiting. And as the human battleship powered up one final system, one the galaxy had never seen before, the voice delivered its last line. The galaxy chose comfort over truth once before. The lights in the chamber failed. And now, every throne will remember why that was a mistake. The galactic throne chamber did not recover quickly. Emergency lights replaced the shattered glow of the crystal ceiling. Delegates spoke over one another, voices sharp with panic, disbelief, and wounded pride. Systems that had never failed in recorded history refused to reboot. Communication arrays spat out fragments of data and then went silent again. Outside the chamber, the human battleship remained motionless. Watching, the High Chancellor stood at the center dais, his composure cracking for the first time in centuries. He did not shout for order. He did not need to. Fear had already done that. Seal the chamber, he said quietly. No external transmissions. No leaks. Several representatives protested at once. The galaxy must be warned. Warn them of what? That the dead are walking? This is a provocation. The Chancellor raised a single hand. This is history, he said. And history is dangerous when mishandled. A senior archivist stepped forward, her limbs trembling despite decades of discipline. Chancellor, the ship's transmission triggered dormant archive layers. Files we were never meant to access. Define never meant, the Chancellor replied. She swallowed. Locked by unanimous throne vote. Predating current law. Some are older than this chamber. A low murmur spread. The Chancellor hesitated, then nodded. Open them. The lights dimmed again as ancient data flooded the central display. Symbols appeared, old languages, forgotten star maps, military classifications no one had used in generations. One heading dominated the screen. Humanity, strategic containment file. A warlord from the outer sectors leaned forward. Containment? You do not contain extinct species. The archivist shook her head slowly. That is the problem. Humanity was never classified as extinct. The room went still. She continued. They were classified as withdrawn. A delegate laughed, sharp and nervous. Withdrawn from the galaxy? Yes, the archivist said. Voluntarily. The files began to play. The chamber watched recordings from centuries past. Human diplomats standing in the same hall, smaller, softer, but unbroken. They spoke of borders, of shared defense, of mutual survival. They spoke plainly, emotionally, honestly. The galaxy had found them irritating. Then the footage changed. War. An enemy older than any empire surged from the dark between stars. Throne fleets burned. Worlds fell. Panic spread faster than light. And then, humanity moved. The records showed human ships forming lines no strategist would approve of. They took hits meant for others. They burned engines past safe limits. They fought not to win territory, but to buy time. The archivist's voice shook. They saved 37 core systems, at the cost of 12 human colonies. The chamber was silent. Another recording played. A throne emergency council. The same chamber. The same seats. The vote appeared. A decision made without human presence. Human border worlds were designated acceptable losses to delay the enemy advance. A queen whispered. They were never told. No, the archivist said. They found out when the enemy arrived. The footage shifted again. Human evacuation fleets. Civilian transport burning. Human warships holding the line long after hope had vanished. And then silence. The archivist closed her eyes. After the war, humanity returned to the throne. Not with weapons. With one request. The recording played. A human representative stood alone at the center dais. You feared extinction, he said. So did we. But you chose us. He paused. We will not retaliate. But we will not stay. The chamber heard the next words clearly. We are leaving the galaxy. The recording ended. No cheers. No protests. No pursuit. Human space went dark. Borders collapsed inward. Jump gates were dismantled. Signals vanished. Humanity did not go to war. They walked away. The archivist exhaled. The throne voted to classify humanity as irrelevant. Their technology was misunderstood. Their ships were never fully cataloged. We assumed they would fade. A synthetic delegate spoke for the first time. Correction. They were not fading. Outside, the human battleship shifted, just enough to be noticed. A tactical officer shouted, "Energy spike." Not a weapon, some kind of deep scan. The scan washed over the throne fleets. Not invasive. Not violent. Judging. The human voice returned, softer now, almost disappointed. We hoped the records would remain sealed. The Chancellor straightened. You have no authority here, he said. Humanity forfeited its place. A pause followed. Then the reply. Authority was never requested. The human ship transmitted a single image into the chamber. A schematic. Not of itself, but of something else. Something vast. Ancient. Moving beneath known space like a shadow under ice. The archivist gasped. That signature, it matches the old enemy. Yes, the human voice said. It was not destroyed. The image expanded. Red markers bloomed across throne territory. It is waking again, the voice continued. In your space. Feeding on your infrastructure. Learning your habits. The chamber erupted. How long? Someone shouted. How many? The human answer was immediate. Long enough. Enough. A general stood. Then why reveal yourselves now? Another pause. Because, the voice said, the silence agreement has been broken. The Chancellor frowned. What agreement? The human ship rotated slightly. For the first time, its size became fully clear. For 800 cycles, the voice said, humanity remained hidden. We did not interfere. We did not warn. We did not return. The energy around the ship deepened. That silence was conditional. The chamber lights flickered again. The voice sharpened. When the galaxy chose convenience over responsibility again, we would return. A new alert blared. Deep space sensors finally locked onto the shadow beneath known space. It was moving. Toward the core. The human voice delivered its final words for this session. This ship was not sent to conquer. It powered another unknown system. Space around it tightened, disciplined, controlled. This ship was sent to observe whether the galaxy had learned. Silence followed. Then one last sentence. So far it has not. The first mistake was believing the human ship was still negotiating. Inside the galactic throne chamber, fear began to curdle into something more dangerous, pride. Empires that had ruled for millennia did not survive by accepting shame. They survived by reasserting dominance when challenged. A warlord from the Rim Dominion rose from his seat, armored plates clicking as he moved. This is a single vessel, he declared. Ancient, isolated, surrounded by the combined fleets of the throne. We are allowing a ghost to dictate terms. Several delegates nodded. Fear sought relief in action. The High Chancellor hesitated. We do not understand its systems. That has never stopped us before, the warlord replied. If humanity wishes to be remembered, let it be as a cautionary relic. Outside the chamber, throne fleets adjusted formation. Hundreds of warships pivoted, weapon arrays warming. Targeting systems still struggled, but brute force solutions were already being prepared. The human battleship did not react. It remained motionless, dark against the starfield, as if indifferent to the movement around it. A fleet commander transmitted the final request. Unknown vessel. Power down and submit to inspection. No reply. The Rim Dominion warlord slammed his fist against the console. Fire a single precision strike. Low yield. We will test its defenses. Several officers froze. The order passed anyway. A single battleship detached from the formation. Its main cannon charged, energy spiking in a familiar, comforting pattern. The weapon was designed to pierce planetary shields. Against one ship, it should have been more than enough. The shot fired. The beam crossed the void in less than a second. Then something impossible happened. The beam slowed. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Slowed. Sensors screamed as time itself seemed to thicken around the projectile. The energy beam stretched, distorted, its coherence unraveling as if reality no longer agreed with its existence. Then it simply fell apart. Particles dispersed harmlessly, fading into nothing before reaching the human hull. The chamber went dead silent. "That was a malfunction," someone whispered. "No," a technician replied, voice shaking. "The weapon functioned perfectly." Space did not. The human battleship moved for the first time. Not forward, not backward. It rotated, slowly, deliberately, as if turning to face a child who had made a loud noise. The human voice returned, no longer calm. This was not requested. The Rim Dominion warlord shouted, "All fleets, prepare to." He never finished the sentence. The human ship fired. There was no flash, no recoil, no visible beam. Space itself bent inward from a point near the ship's bow. A thin line appeared, so precise it looked unreal. It extended outward, not toward the fleets, but past them, toward a nearby moon. The line touched the moon's surface. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the moon separated. Not exploded. Separated. Two perfect halves drifted apart, their inner cores exposed like a clean surgical cut. No debris. No shockwave. Just silence. Every throne sensor locked onto the event. Every artificial intelligence froze mid-calculation. A technician whispered, "That moon was reinforced. Artificial gravity core. Military grade." The human voice spoke again. "That was a warning." The Rim Dominion fleet panicked. Ships attempted to jump. Engines failed. Navigation collapsed. Gravity wells shifted unpredictably, pulling vessels off formation. The human ship did not pursue. Instead, a new signal spread across the system. A field, vast, invisible, absolute. Thrusters died. Weapons powered down. Entire armadas drifted, helpless, caught in an unseen grip. "This is impossible," the Chancellor breathed. The archivist shook her head slowly. "No, this is deliberate." The human voice continued, colder now. "You mistake restraint for weakness." Inside the chamber, fear turned to dread. "What are those fields?" a scientist demanded. "They are not shields," another replied. "They are limitations, like rules imposed on reality." A synthetic delegate spoke, its tone flat. Conclusion: human technology operates on principles beyond current throne comprehension. The human battleship began transmitting again, not words, but data, historical overlays, comparative analyses, silent lessons. The galaxy was not stronger than before. It was comfortable. The human voice returned, quieter, heavier. "When humanity left, we dismantled our presence. We sealed our borders. We buried our weapons." The ship's surface illuminated with faint markings, scars of ancient battles, names etched into metal. This vessel was not buried. The throne chamber watched as the ship projected an image of itself, designation appearing at last. "UNS last argument." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The voice continued. "Humanity built few ships like this. Not fleets. Not armadas." The image shifted, showing destroyed systems, lost colonies, evacuation corridors. "We built them to end conversations when words failed." The High Chancellor found his voice. "If you possess this power," he said carefully, "why reveal it now? Why not remain hidden?" The answer came without hesitation. "Because you were fired." Silence fell again. The human ship began a deeper scan, not of fleets, but of the throne itself. Old stations, hidden installations, secret research zones. The archivist gasped. "It's accessing sealed sectors. We never broadcast those coordinates." "You did not need to," the human voice replied. "They were mapped long ago." A new projection appeared. Deep beneath throne space, something massive shifted. Tendrils of energy pulsed outward, feeding on infrastructure, communication relays, population centers. The ancient enemy, closer than anyone believed. "You are not under threat from us," the human voice said. The field tightened slightly. Fleets strained against invisible boundaries. "You are under threat because you forgot." The Rim Dominion warlord slumped back into his seat, all fire gone. The human ship powered down its weapon systems, but the field remained. "This demonstration concludes," the voice said. The throne waited, breath held. "One ship," the voice continued, "has restrained your combined fleets without destruction." A pause. "Humanity does not require conquest." The final line landed like a verdict. Only memory. The human battleship returned to stillness. But the galaxy had already crossed a line it could never uncross. And deep beneath known space, something ancient stirred, drawn by the noise, the fear, and the terrible realization that humanity was no longer silent. The galactic throne did not adjourn. It could not. Entire armadas floated powerless beyond the chamber walls, trapped in a field no one could see and no one could fight. Communications across the core flickered in and out as ancient systems struggled to adapt to rules they had never been designed to obey. And above all of it, the human battleship waited. Not threatening, not demanding, waiting. Inside the chamber, the High Chancellor lowered himself into his seat, suddenly older than he had ever appeared. Around him, rulers who once commanded trillions sat in stunned silence, forced to confront something they had not faced in centuries. Consequences. The archivist stepped forward again, her voice barely steady. The ship's scan unlocked additional layers, she said. Personal logs, strategic records, human testimonies. Play them, the Chancellor said quietly. The first image appeared. A human colony world, bright and alive. Cities clung to coastlines. Children ran beneath open skies. Ships moved peacefully in orbit, not warships, but transports and research vessels. The archivist swallowed. This was Haven Reach, one of the 12 colonies designated as delay zones. The footage shifted. Sirens, fire, evacuation lines stretching for kilometers. Human defense fleets forming thin, desperate walls in space. A throne commander's voice echoed over the recording. Human forces hold positions. Reinforcements are delayed. Delayed. The galaxy watched as human ships fought until they physically broke apart. As civilian transports launched under fire. As some never made it off-world. The recording cut to a human bridge, shaking violently. A captain stood at the center, bleeding, exhausted. "We're not holding the line," he said calmly. "We're becoming it." The footage ended. The chamber was silent. Another recording began. This time, it showed a throne council meeting. This chamber, centuries ago. Different faces. Same seats. The vote played again. Sacrifice the human colonies. By time. No objections were raised. The archivist spoke, voice cracking. Humanity lost over 3 billion civilians in those delayed actions. They never asked for compensation. They never demanded apologies. A delegate whispered, "They should have." "Yes," the archivist replied. "They should have." The human voice returned, softer now, stripped of its earlier edge. "You called it strategy." The battleship's hull dimmed slightly, as if the ship itself remembered. "We called it trust." The Chancellor stood slowly. "If this is why you returned," he said, "then say it plainly. What does humanity demand?" The human response came after a long pause. "We did not return to demand." A new projection appeared. Human space, what little remained, sealed behind collapsed jump corridors. Star systems wrapped in defensive geometry so complex it resembled art more than engineering. When humanity left, the voice continued. "We did not retreat in anger. We retreated to survive ourselves." The image shifted to vast construction yards hidden beyond known space. Not fleets, but singular ships. Each one is massive. Each one is different. "We learned," the voice said, "not how to conquer faster, but how to prevent betrayal from ever being necessary again." A scientist whispered, "Those aren't warships." "No," the archivist said slowly. "They're guardians." The human voice hardened. "This vessel was built with one condition." The projection zoomed in on the UNS last argument. It would wake only if the galaxy repeated its most dangerous habit. A delegate frowned. "Which habit?" The human answer came like a blade. "Choosing convenience over responsibility." The chamber trembled as a new alert sounded. Not from the human ship. From deep space. Sensors finally stabilized enough to track the ancient enemy. It was no longer dormant. It was spreading, subtle, patient, intelligent. Nesting inside abandoned stations. Feeding on data flows. Learning the rhythms of throne space. A military advisor shouted, "We can mobilize. Our fleets. You can try." The human voice interrupted. "You will fail." Anger flared. "You cannot know that." "We already do," the voice replied. "Because we failed once too." The projection shifted again. Human battle footage against the ancient enemy. Entire human task forces erased in moments. Not by firepower, but by adaptation. The enemy learned faster than any known species. That enemy does not fear numbers, the voice explained. It fears understanding. The archivist realized the truth. You didn't just fight it, she said softly. You studied it. Yes, the human voice replied. At great cost. The throne chamber buzzed with uneasy realization. The human ship had not arrived alone. It had arrived prepared. The Chancellor's voice was hoarse. Then help us. Another pause. We are helping you, the human voice said, by forcing you to remember why we left. The field restraining the fleets tightened slightly, not crushing, but unmistakably present. This galaxy has grown used to safety without sacrifice, the voice continued. You outsource your suffering. You hide your mistakes in archives. You erase names when they become inconvenient. The human ship projected a list. Human colony names. Human fleet designations. Human casualty counts. Each one burned itself into the chamber walls. You erased us, the voice said. Not because we were weak, but because remembering us was uncomfortable. Silence stretched. Then the human voice softened again. We did not come back for revenge. The UNS last argument powered a new system. Not a weapon. A shield. A vast one. It expanded outward, wrapping entire throne systems in a protective lattice invisible to the naked eye. The ancient enemy recoiled where the shield touched it. A scientist gasped. It's isolating them, cutting off their feeding channels. The human voice explained. This shield will hold, for a time. The Chancellor looked up sharply. And after, the human voice said, you will decide what kind of galaxy you wish to be. The chamber absorbed the weight of that statement. The human ship began powering down secondary systems. This phase is complete, the voice concluded. The debt has been presented. A final sentence followed, quiet but absolute. Whether it is paid, remains to be seen. The human battleship returned to silence. But the galaxy could no longer pretend the past was buried. Because humanity had not returned to accuse. They had returned to remind me. And the ancient enemy, sensing resistance it remembered too well, began to move faster. The first worlds went dark without warning. No explosions. No distress calls. No heroic last stands broadcast across the net. They simply disappeared. Inside the galactic throne chamber, the lights dimmed as population indicators collapsed from green to red to nothing at all. Entire systems vanished from the live map as if they had never existed. A senior analyst staggered backward from her console. Those were core-adjacent worlds, she whispered. Fortified. Shielded. Populations in the billions. No debris fields appeared. No radiation spikes. Just absence. The ancient enemy was no longer hiding. It was feeding. The High Chancellor slammed his hand against the dais. Mobilize everything. Override fleet restraints. We cannot sit idle while our worlds die. Before any order could move, the human battleship reacted. The restraint field did not tighten. It changed. Suddenly, throne fleet commanders could see clearly again, not their own ships, but the enemy. The void itself peeled back layers of distortion, revealing shapes that made seasoned admirals recoil. Structures grown rather than built. Vessels that flowed like liquid shadow. Massive, distributed minds that did not rely on centralized control. The enemy was not a fleet. It was an ecosystem. The human voice returned, heavier now, stripped of patience. This is what you face. A general shouted. We can still fight. Release us. You can fight, the human voice replied. You will lose. The projection shifted to predictive models. Thrown weapon strikes failed repeatedly in simulation. The enemy adapted mid-battle, rewriting its own weaknesses faster than thrown systems could respond. A synthetic delegate calculated silently, then spoke. Outcome probability. Thrown extinction event within 3 standard cycles. Panic erupted. You cannot expect us to accept annihilation. The human voice did not soften. We do not expect acceptance. A new image appeared. Human fleets, long gone, fighting the same enemy centuries earlier. Different weapons. Different strategies. Same outcome. Defeat. The archivist stared in horror. You lost. Yes, the human voice said. Every time. The room froze. Then how are we still here? The Chancellor asked. The answer took longer this time. Because, the voice said quietly, we learned when not to fight. The projection zoomed out. Human ships are withdrawing. Sacrificing systems. Collapsing routes behind them. Isolating infected regions at the cost of everything inside. A ruler screamed, "That's genocide." The human voice hardened. "No, that is containment." The ancient enemy's nature became clear. It did not seek territory. It sought connection, trade routes, communication hubs, population density. It grew where civilization thrived. The galaxy had unknowingly built it a perfect feeding ground. A strategist whispered, "We made ourselves vulnerable." "Yes," the human voice replied, "and we warned you once." The throne chamber erupted into argument. Accusations flew. Blame shifted wildly. Some demanded humanity fix what they had caused by leaving. Others demanded the human ship be destroyed before it decided the throne was no longer worth saving. The UNS last argument listened to none of it. Instead, it acted. The shield expanded again, but this time, it did not protect throne worlds. It cut them off. Trade routes collapsed. Jump corridors folded into inaccessible knots. Communication relays went dark. Entire empires were isolated overnight. A ruler screamed, "You're strangling us." "No," the human voice corrected. "We are slowing the bleed." The enemy recoiled where isolation took hold, unable to cross the sealed boundaries. But the cost was immediate. Billions were trapped without support. Economies froze. Panic spread faster than the enemy ever could. The Chancellor's voice broke. "You are condemning us." The human response was quiet. "We condemned ourselves once." A long silence followed. Then the human voice continued. "This enemy cannot be destroyed by force alone. It adapts. It learns. It turns your strengths into its armor." A new projection appeared. A human plan. Not a battle. A sacrifice. The archivist stared at the data, horror dawning. That would require entire systems. "Yes," the voice replied. "Empty ones. Abandoned ones. Ones already lost." A general shook his head violently. "Unacceptable." The human voice sharpened. "So was sacrificing human worlds without consent." The chamber went silent. The truth settled like a weight. Humanity was not offering salvation. It was offering a choice. The voice softened slightly. "You can preserve your pride and die slowly. Or you can preserve the galaxy and carry the cost." The throne members looked at one another. For the first time, there was no clever solution. No delegation of blame. No species to sacrifice quietly. Every option hurts. Outside the chamber, the ancient enemy pressed harder against the new boundaries, probing, testing, learning. It was already adapting to partial isolation. Time was running out. The High Chancellor stood, shoulders shaking. "If we agree," he asked, "what happens to humanity?" The human ship remained silent for a long moment. Then the answer came. "Nothing." Confusion rippled through the chamber. "We are not returning," the voice continued. "We are not rebuilding your worlds. We are not reclaiming our place." A pause. "We will hold the line while you decide who you are." The restraint field eased slightly. Not a release, but a gesture. "You have one cycle," the voice said. "Choose." The projection faded. The human battleship returned to stillness. The throne chamber was left staring at a galaxy breaking apart, not from invasion, but from the consequences of its own history. And for the first time since its founding, the galactic throne understood true fear. Not fear of death, fear of responsibility. The galaxy did not wait for the throne's decision. The ancient enemy adapted faster than even humanity predicted. At the edge of the isolation zones, space began to fracture, not violently, but deliberately. The enemy stopped pushing against sealed routes and instead grew around them, forming new pathways through regions once considered empty and useless. Dead space was no longer dead. Inside the throne chamber, exhausted rulers watched the map shift hour by hour. Red zones crept forward. Entire constellations dimmed as populations fled or vanished. The one-cycle deadline humanity had given them was shrinking by the minute. A military strategist finally broke the silence. "We cannot hold. Even with the isolation fields, it's slipping through. It's learning faster than we can seal." The archivist turned slowly toward the projection of the human battleship. They expected this. The UNS last argument responded before being addressed. "Yes." The single word echoed heavier than any alarm. The human voice returned, stripped of ceremony. "The enemy has reached the phase we anticipated." A ruler shouted, "Then act. You said you would hold the line." "We are," the voice replied. Outside the chamber, the human battleship finally moved. Not toward the enemy, toward the heart of throne space. Gasps rippled through the chamber as the ship accelerated, not with visible thrust, but with controlled manipulation of space itself. Distances collapsed. The ship crossed light years in moments without breaking reality. A technician shouted, "It's entering populated sectors." The human voice answered calmly, "We know." The battleship arrived above a massive throne shipyard, one of the galaxy's greatest military hubs. Thousands of vessels were docked, under construction, or awaiting orders. Before panic could spread, the human ship acted. Every throne weapon system in the sector shut down. Not disabled, redefined. Energy matrices rewrote themselves. Power flows rerouted. Safety locks engaged that no throne engineer had ever designed. The shipyard went silent. The human voice addressed the sector. "This action is not hostile." The throne chamber erupted. "You are disarming us." "Yes," the human voice replied. "Temporarily." A general slammed his fists against the console. "You are crippling our defenses while the enemy advances." "No," the voice corrected. "We are preventing you from wasting them." A new projection appeared, this one unlike the others. A real-time battlefield. The ancient enemy surged toward a cluster of throne worlds. Billions were still evacuating. Fleets rushed to intercept. The human battleship repositioned again. This time, it entered the path of the enemy. Alone. A ruler whispered, "It's committing suicide." The human voice replied softly, "No." The enemy struck. Not with weapons, but with presence. Space warped. Throne sensors overloaded. The enemy's mass spread like a living storm, seeking connections, data, minds. The human battleship did not fire. Instead, it anchored. Space around it hardened, obeying new rules. The enemy slammed into an invisible boundary and recoiled violently, fragments of its structure tearing away like burning mist. The chamber watched in stunned silence. The human ship began to glow, not brightly, but deeply, like a star compressed into metal. "This is a containment maneuver," the voice explained. "We call it a memory lock." The enemy adapted instantly, reshaping itself, probing for weaknesses. The human ship responded just as fast, but differently. It did not counter. It was anticipated. Sections of space collapsed ahead of the enemy's movement. Not destroyed, closed. Paths vanished before the enemy could use them. Routes it had not yet chosen became impossible. A strategist gasped. "They're not reacting. They're predicting." "Yes," the archivist whispered. "They know how it thinks." The human voice continued. "We learned the enemy does not fear loss. It fears limitation." The UNS last argument expanded its field outward, not as a shield, but as a framework. Space itself became structured, disciplined, hostile to uncontrolled growth. The enemy screamed, not in sound, but in distortion. Entire sections of its mass unraveled as its own adaptive processes failed. The throne chamber watched something no doctrine had ever described. A war fought without fire. A battle where intelligence was the weapon. The enemy tried to retreat. The human ship denied it. The containment field tightened, not crushing, but defining. The enemy's options shrank until it could no longer spread. For the first time since it awakened, the ancient enemy was trapped. Cheers erupted across the throne chamber, then stopped. The human voice spoke again. "This maneuver cannot be sustained indefinitely." The glow of the battleship dimmed slightly. "The framework is anchored to this vessel. The longer we hold, the more strain it places on our core systems." A ruler shouted, "Then rotate ships. Reinforce it." The human response was immediate. "You cannot." Silence fell. "No throne technology can interface with this structure without destabilizing it," the voice explained. "This is a human solution, built on human assumptions." The archivist understood. It was never meant to be shared. "Yes." The battleship trembled subtly as energy feedback rippled across its hull. The enemy lashed out again, more violently this time. Entire sections of controlled space shattered, but the framework adapted, sealing breaches faster than they formed. The human ship was bleeding power. A technician whispered, "If it fails." The human voice cut in. "It will not fail." Another pause. "It will end." The throne chamber absorbed the meaning slowly. "You're sacrificing the ship," the chancellor said hoarsely. The human voice was steady. "This ship was built for this." The UNS last argument transmitted internal footage. Human engineers, centuries ago, signing their names into the hull plating. Not out of pride, but acceptance. This vessel was designed to hold what no one else would, the voice said, including the cost. The glow intensified again as the human ship pushed harder, compressing the enemy's mass into a shrinking pocket of space. The enemy resisted with everything it had. Reality screamed. Stars flickered. Time synced across entire regions. The human ship held. The throne chamber watched as the impossible happened. The enemy stopped advancing. Then it stopped moving. Then, slowly, it began to fade, starved of the connections it required to exist. The containment field collapsed inward, sealing the remnants into a pocket so dense and isolated that even the concept struggled to reach it. The human ship drifted, systems flickering, hull scarred and glowing with stress fractures. But the galaxy was quiet. For the first time since the awakening, no new worlds vanished. No red zones expanded. The human voice returned, weaker now. This phase is complete. The throne chamber did not cheer. They watched the lone battleship drift in silence, holding the remains of a galaxy-ending threat within itself. And for the first time, they understood the truth humanity had lived with for centuries. Some victories are not won. They endured. The silence after the battle was heavier than the battle itself. Across the galaxy, sensors slowly stabilized. Navigation routes reopened one by one. Civilian broadcasts resumed, filled with confusion, relief, and unanswered questions. For the first time in cycles, no new systems vanished from the map. The ancient enemy was gone, contained, starved, reduced to something that could no longer threaten the living. But the human battleship still drifted at the center of the containment zone. Alone, inside the galactic throne chamber, no one spoke. The rulers who had shouted only hours earlier now watched the distant image of the UNS last argument with quiet dread. Its hull was no longer smooth. Fractures glowed faintly along its surface, like cracks in cooling metal. Entire sections were dark. The containment framework still existed, but it flickered, unstable, tied entirely to the ship's failing core. A medical officer whispered, Is anyone alive on it?" The archivist did not answer immediately. Then she said, "Yes." The human voice returned for the first time since the containment collapsed. It was weaker now, slower, still controlled, but carrying a weight no system could hide. "The enemy is no longer capable of expansion," the voice said. "Its remnants are sealed beyond recovery." A ruler exhaled shakily. "You did it." A pause followed. "No," the human voice replied. "We finished it." The distinction chilled the chamber. The High Chancellor stood, his posture no longer regal, but human in its strain. "Your ship is failing," he said. "We can send aid." 2 ships. Engineers. The human response came gently. "You cannot." A technician stepped forward. "We are reading about the cascading core collapse. Power redistribution failure. Structural fatigue beyond recovery thresholds." The archivist closed her eyes. She already knew. The human voice continued. "This vessel was never designed to return." The chamber stirred. "What do you mean?" the Chancellor asked. The human ship transmitted one final archive. This one not of war, not of betrayal, but of creation. Human engineers stood inside vast construction halls. They were older than most soldiers. Some were missing limbs. Others leaned on supports. None looked away from the camera. "This is the UNS last argument," a human engineer said. "It is not a ship meant to win wars." Another voice followed. "It is meant to end them." Schematics appeared, layers upon layers of redundant systems, not for efficiency, but for endurance. The core was different from any throne design. It did not burn fuel. It consumed probability, collapsing potential futures into singular outcomes. A human scientist spoke next. "This core will hold as long as the ship exists. When the ship fails, the core will seal permanently." The implication was immediate. The ship was locked. The throne chamber understood at once. The High Chancellor's voice trembled. "If the ship is destroyed, the enemy never returns," the human voice finished. Silence followed. A ruler whispered, "You built a coffin." "Yes," the human voice said simply. The UNS last argument drifted closer to the containment pocket, its remaining thrusters firing in short, careful bursts. A strategist shouted, "We can replace the ship. Build a station. Transfer the core." "You cannot," the human voice replied again. "The core is entangled with this hull. with its crew. The archivist looked up sharply. Crew. Another pause. Then the human ship transmitted internal visuals. A bridge, dimly lit, scarred, ancient. Human figures sat strapped into stations not meant for comfort. Some were gray-haired. Some were young. None showed fear. A commander stood at the center, older than the rest, his uniform worn smooth by time. This ship does not operate with automation alone, he said calmly. It requires judgment, context, restraint. He looked directly into the camera. Things machines cannot be trusted with. The throne chamber watched as the truth settled. The crew had known. They had always known. The human commander spoke again, now alive. When humanity left the galaxy, we made a promise, he said. Not to rule, not to punish, but to watch. He glanced around his bridge. And if the galaxy ever faced something it could not survive alone, we would answer. The Chancellor took a step forward. You paid the price once already, he said. We wronged you. Let us carry it this time. The human commander shook his head slowly. That is not how this ends. The ship shuddered as another system failed. Warning lights flickered across the bridge. The containment pocket pulsed once, then stabilized again. The price was already chosen. The commander continued. Centuries ago, when this hull was laid down, the archivist's voice broke. Why? The commander smiled faintly. Because someone has to stay behind. The throne chamber fell apart. Protests erupted. Orders were shouted. Offers of alliance, reparations, apologies poured out in a flood. The human commander listened to none of it. He raised a hand, and the chamber fell silent. Humanity does not need monuments, he said. We do not need your guilt. The UNS last argument began to drift deeper into the containment zone, drawing the sealed enemy farther from known space. We needed to know, the commander said, whether the galaxy would face its mistakes or repeat them. He met their gaze one last time. You have your answer now. The ship's systems dimmed further. Non-essential power shut down. Life support narrowed to the bridge alone. The commander turned to his crew. It's time. No one argued. One by one, they locked their stations into final alignment. The ship adjusted its orientation, placing itself directly between the containment pocket and the rest of the galaxy. The human voice returned to the throne chamber, now quieter than ever. This vessel will remain here until failure. A pause. That failure will be permanent. The Chancellor bowed his head. We will remember you, he said. The human commander considered this. Good, he replied. But do not worship us. The ship's hull lights faded. Learn from us. The UNS last argument powered its final maneuver, anchoring itself to the containment pocket with absolute certainty. The last transmission reached every corner of the galaxy. Humanity did not return to be saved. The ship vanished into controlled collapse, folding itself and the sealed enemy into a silent, unreachable point beyond space. Humanity returned so no one else would fall alone. The galaxy went quiet. The containment pocket was gone. So was the ship. And for the first time in its history, the Galactic Throne understood the full cost of peace. Not because it was won, but because someone chose to stay behind to make sure it lasted. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no victory parades, no triumph broadcasts, no declarations carved into crystal halls. The moment the UNS last argument vanished, something fundamental shifted, like a star quietly going out that everyone somehow felt, even without looking up. For several long minutes, the Galactic Throne Chamber remained completely silent. No alarms, no data streams, no voices demanding answers, just absence. The central display still showed the containment zone, now empty. No enemy, no human ship, no measurable distortion, nothing. The High Chancellor stood alone at the dais, hands resting on cold metal that suddenly felt heavier than it ever had before. Around him, rulers of 1,000 empires sat unmoving, their authority intact but their certainty destroyed. They're gone, a technician finally whispered. All readings confirm it. The threat is finished. Finished. The words sounded wrong. The archivist slowly stepped forward, her voice unsteady. Human casualty report, she said. Total count, 1 ship. 1 crew. A ruler flinched. That's it. The archivist nodded. Yes, that is all humanity sent. The chamber did not erupt. No one laughed in relief. No one cheered at the efficiency of it. 1 ship. Against extinction. The silence stretched until the High Chancellor finally spoke. Restore the archives, he said. Several delegates looked up sharply. Which ones? All of them, he replied. Every sealed record. Every erased name. Every classified loss. The archivist's breath caught. That will destabilize entire historical frameworks. Good, the Chancellor said quietly. They deserve to be. Across the galaxy, similar moments unfolded. On worlds that had never known war, people stared at blank skies, unaware of how close annihilation had come. On border systems that had been half evacuated, survivors wept, not from victory, but from a grief they could not fully explain. They felt it. The absence. Within days, the consequences began. Trade resumed, but it felt fragile. Military fleets returned to dock, but commanders issued fewer orders and asked more questions. Artificial intelligences revised their ethical cores, haunted by data they could not quantify. And everywhere, one name spread, no longer erased. Humanity. The throne reconvened a week later. This time, the chamber felt smaller. The High Chancellor opened the session without ceremony. The galaxy stands because it was held, he said. Not by law, not by power, but by choice. He gestured to the central display. A new statute appeared. The human record, permanent and unalterable. No species, he continued, will ever again be removed from history for convenience. No sacrifice will ever again be hidden behind classification. A murmur rippled through the chamber, not agreement, but recognition. A queen rose slowly. What of humanity's territory? She asked. Their sealed space. Their abandoned systems. The Chancellor shook his head. They are not abandoned. He paused. They are closed. A new map appeared. Human space marked not as territory, but as sanctuary. No expansion. No mining. No research incursions. Trespass was forbidden. Not by fear of reprisal. By respect. The archivist added quietly. We recovered one final data packet. It was released at the moment the ship collapsed. The chamber leaned forward. The packet contained no threats. No technology. No instructions. Only words. A message humanity had prepared long before the UN's last argument ever woke up. It read, if you are hearing this, then the galaxy survived. Do not thank us. Do not build statues. Do not say we saved you. Say instead that you learned. The archivist lowered her hands, tears visible on her face. That was all. The throne sat with it. In the cycles that followed, change came, not quickly, but deeply. Border worlds gained representation. Military doctrines were rewritten to prioritize evacuation over victory. Empires that had once measured strength in fleets began measuring it in resilience. And whenever debates grew arrogant, whenever someone said acceptable losses too easily, someone else would quietly say, remember the humans. Far beyond the core, near the edge of mapped reality, a small research vessel detected something strange. A distortion. Faint. Stable. Not the enemy. Not the ship. A residue. Space there behaved differently. Calmer. Disciplined. As if it remembered being held in place by something that refused to let go. The researchers labeled the phenomenon cautiously. Human anchor effect. They did not approach it. Some things, they understood now, were not meant to be touched. Back in the throne chamber, the High Chancellor stood alone after the session ended. He stared at the empty space where the image of the UN's last argument had once been displayed. One ship. He spoke softly, though no one was listening. You deserved better than regret. The galaxy moved on, as galaxies always do. New species rose. Old empires faded. History continued its endless cycle. But one truth endured, carved not into stone, but into behavior. Humanity was no longer underestimated. Not because of fear, but because the galaxy finally understood what it meant when a species chose restraint over dominance, sacrifice over survival, and responsibility over comfort. Somewhere beyond reach, where no sensor could follow, the legacy of one human ship remained. Not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as a standard the galaxy would spend eternity trying to live up to. And whenever the stars grew quiet, those who truly listened could almost hear it. The echo of a voice that had asked for nothing and gave everything.